What's up, everybody? How the fuck are you doing tonight? It's Chris Enriquez, aka at Chris Enriquez Drums. You have to say that now because that's the way shit goes in this digital age. So yeah, I am at Chris Enriquez Drums. I work at Revolver Mag, and I also play drums in a band called Spotlights, at Spotlights Music, and guitar in a band called Total Meltdown. So anyway, enough about me. What you hear in the back is Black Anvil, an incredible metal band from New York. And the bass player slash singer is a good friend of mine. He's an unsung hero in the sense that he's been in the game for a long time. He was in Kill Your Idols, played on most of their albums. He was in None Were Black. What else can I say about Paul? So you kind of figured it out by now. I'm talking about Paul Delaney. Paul played in a shit ton of other bands, filling in Cro-Mags, Madball, H2O, so many. Anyway, we're gonna have some fun tonight, tell some funny stories, and we're gonna let Paul tell his story and be heard, because you know what? The guy is criminally overlooked, and he is just an important dude in the New York scene, and I want all of you to get to know my friend Paul, and I'd like to get to know him better. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and shut the fuck up and get Paul Delaney from Black Anvil on the... Cool. Yeah, you guys are sick of hearing me ramble every night anyway. Thanks for spending your evening with us.
Here we go.
Paul
What
Delaney.
up? Let's adjust this shit a little bit.
Hey, no problem. Get comfortable, dude. We got to sit here for an hour and stare at each other.
Fucking hour.
Do your thing, man.
Hold on, let me do my fucking thing. Let me do my thing over here.
I'm telling the people what's up, man. Telling people about how criminally overlooked you are and what a fucking legend you are in New York, playing in so many fucking bands. And I want to tell your story tonight. You know what I'm saying?
All right, criminally overlooked. I'm okay with being visible by only eyes that need to see or that matter. I don't need eyes that don't belong. You know, I hit that point in my life where I don't give a fuck.
I feel you, man. I feel you.
But I appreciate your sentiment.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm going to dive right into it. I'll save some of the storytelling and whatnot for later on. But I will start here. I remember meeting you for the first time. I saw Kill Your Idols a bunch of times in Long Island, where I'm originally from, where many of the people from St. Vitus are originally from. And oddly enough, my first introduction to you was my band, On the Might of Princes, played with Kill Your Idols in some weird place.
Columbus?
Yeah, maybe.
Columbus, Ohio.
Well, no, we played a couple shows together. Well, one show was with Indecision in
So
Columbus.
local.
Yeah, another show was like in the Midwest somewhere, and we had no idea that we were playing with you guys. But yeah, we hung out. You guys were super cool, and it was during a time that a lot of bands were super pretentious and trying to be rock stars, and you guys couldn't have been more opposite. So I'm happy to call you a friend and know you all these years.
I feel the same, man. I feel the same. Over the years, there's been many people that have, I don't know, you get into something new, you get down with some people, and all of a sudden that gets to you a little bit, and you act a little different toward people you've known forever, and you've never, ever even come close to that, and I appreciate that.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's a cool scene to be a part of. I just think it's all the same thing, and we're just lucky that decades later we all get to be part of it, know each other, hang out, and do shit like this. Let me ask you, so where are you originally from? Because Kill Your Idols was known as a Long Island band, but you're not from Long Island, right?
I'm from Queens. I'm from South Ozone Park, Queens. I grew up there until I moved to Brooklyn in my 20s, you know.
Okay. And what were your earliest memories, you know, not even getting into, we're talking childhood now. When you grew up in Queens, what were some of your earliest memories of discovering music for the first time?
My mom. My mother first and foremost, and honestly, everything goes back to her. Her record collection was so eclectic, man, from David Bowie to Elvis Costello to Queen to Van Halen. She loved King Crimson, yes. Uh, X-Ray Specs. She had a Nihilistics record. You name it, and like Black Flag and Dead Kennedys, and as you can see it, I'm finding the things that are a little darker, like some Frank Zappa records that to me were frightening because it was so weird. But now I look back and it's not, But she had a huge influence on pushing me to always learn things. Like she would take me into the village, in the city,
Right.
and there was this record store called It's Only Rock and Roll on 8th Street, and I recall her and one of her best friends would quiz me. They'd like make me look at pins and stickers and patches and records and be like, "Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" And I'm like, so. Yeah, she really put it in my head pretty early on, and then like anything, you leave the nest and find your way. So
what year is this? Because it's funny is you have a young face, so I always felt like you were younger than the rest of the guys.
It's this.
Yeah.
I am younger than everyone. I'm 42 and a half. I'm born 77, so figure. I don't know, probably 5 or 6 when she started torturing me like this.
Yeah.
Giving me like a Rod Stewart haircut and just sort of bullying me. I remember my first earring. She made me pierce my ear. I was in like 6th grade, and the first earrings she got me were this skull with sunglasses and another like little tombstone stud with like grass and a middle finger. This was my mom. That's like, go to school like that, and
right.
her like a hand-me-down Suicidal Tendency shirt with cut sleeves that I believe my friend Katie owns now. If she's watching this, she has that shirt. That's or Shevchuk. So one of those two. Someone in the Number Black Circle has the Suicidal shirt. But yeah, that like she was just that person.
That's awesome.
And
That's
and
awesome.
that started my snowball.
So cool to have somebody in your family that exposes you. For me, it was my older sister. It was a lot of new wave music, and then obviously some punk and stuff. By the way,
How old are you now?
I'm gonna be 40, so
Good,
yeah,
good.
I'm getting there. Yeah, 1980. I'm a 1980 guy. While I'm just getting started here, if anybody here does have any questions, there's a question mark box that I'll eventually look at some point in the middle of this episode. Leave the comments or whatever you want to leave. It's just easier for me if I have all the questions in the box below. So when and how did you start playing bass?
My father played bass, but he's never been in the picture and has never been of any importance to me whatsoever, except for one thing that he did. But he's never been of any importance to me at all in my life. But my godfather, because I grew up Catholic before that got, taken care of. I grew up loosely Catholic, like everyone in Queens, if you're Irish, Italian. And when I received confirmation, communion, whichever one of the two, I had to like choose my sponsor. And my godfather, Gene, who was my mother's friend, the one that helped torture me and haze me when I was a kid, he was this maniac biker, and he played bass. And it's just a coincidence that that's the reason why I chose to play bass, because I thought he was cool. I looked up to the guy, and they were into like all sorts of rock and roll and heavy stuff. And that's the actual reason, very coincidental to the fact that my father played bass. However, his little minuscule role in this was giving me my first bass. My mom, for whatever reason, made me call him, and it was like, you should ask him what kind of bass to play. So I vaguely remember the call, and I don't talk about this a lot because whatever. But I called him up, and we made a plan. He's like, I'm going to give you my first bass. And I showed up at my grandmother's house on that side of the family to get it, and he just like dropped it off and left it there.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm a kid, so whatever. I would take it out of case and whatever. I ended up breaking it like 3 months later. I still have it, and it's still broken. But it's broken and in a closet buried right over there, which is sort of fitting. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Who are that's a pretty intense story, but I love it because it's like you learned early on, you still have it. Not many people can say they still have their first instrument. Who are some of the bassists that at the time you were inspired by and looking up to?
At the time, it was like when I was young. I was in like fifth or sixth grade, and I was, Cream. Some of the bands that made me want to play bass, like "Sunshine of Your Love" is the first song almost everyone learns on bass.
It's a heavy one too. It's a heavy
Uh,
one. Time.
so, the influences were like Cream, and I really loved this bass player Stuart Ham when I was a kid. Uh, it, it it was mostly him, and I would learn like Police songs, whatever was simple, like Van Halen. Uh, Michael Anthony wasn't the flashiest bass player, but just hitting the open E in the beginning of Running with the Devil, I
Oh
could
my
do
God,
that
it's so powerful.
before I even know how to play the rest. I probably still don't know how to play the rest of the song, but I don't care. And you do the pick thing on the guitar. So yeah, it was stuff like that. It wasn't anyone specific. It was when I first started. It was my godfather looked mad cool with like a handlebar mustache and a panhead and a cool bass, and then I just wanted to play music.
Yeah.
And I was already put on to Misfits at this point through my mom. I was already put on to Misfits at this point, and that was some easier stuff to learn. So I was taking bass lessons on Long Island in Baldwin uh, on Grand Avenue. I was taking bass lessons, and I would just show up with stuff that I wanted to learn. And the guy was like, "You want to learn some Aerosmith?" And luckily, he was cool enough and taught me some songs. But once I figured out I could do stuff by ear, I was like, "All right, I could just put on this Misfits record and figure it out." And at that point, like the people I started, I gravitated toward were like definitely Jerry Only because he was such a low hanging bass and barely played and
The
just swung it
aesthetic.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. But other dudes that I physically were engaged with were like Paul Stanley. I've said this in other interviews. James Hetfield. I really like this aggressive, just physical look of just guitar low and business.
Yeah.
Uh, the Baldwin represent Busky. Busky knows.
Yeah.
Another
We got
fellow
some.
bass player.
We got some homies in the house.
Yep, yep. As long as everyone behaves, because I've been getting these texts. So yeah, it was those guys, and that's sort of what like. Of course, Cliff Burton, Geddy Lee, tons of bass players. That the list goes on. But what really made me want to stick with it was the easier instrument. It only had four strings, and just certain people were cool.
Yeah.
And I just chose the bass because it was the easier one.
Yeah, and the Misfits reference too is cool because it's like same thing as learning Ramones songs. Obviously, everyone says Ramones more because that was on the radio and shit, but same concept, which is like it makes you feel like you can do it. Three chord song, really good
Yeah, yeah.
way to get started. Um, and then what about? I mean, you talked about having family that brought you into the village and checking out some cool rock bands and testing you on your knowledge, which is cool, and you're already into stuff. But when and how did you discover underground music? Who were the bands? What were the venues? Let's go there.
Um, Underground music. So I guess Misfits and Ramones was so the introduction. Like I was saying before, there were some records that my mom had that I loved the imagery, but it was the sound was too raw for me to like understand at that point in time. Like Dead Kennedys and God We Trust, the cassette looked cool, but I listened to it and it was like the same thing on both sides. So I just run it repeatedly, but I didn't love it because it sounded sort of like shit. Same like the Cramps. She loved the Cramps and the artwork was so cool. It's funny. I was talking about the Cramps yesterday with Gary, and the artwork was cool, but the band I hated it. It was whack.
So
I never
funny,
liked the
dude,
Cramps.
because I
Uh,
bought that based on it was the Bad Music from Bad
yeah,
Music. I bought
yeah.
that because of what it looked like, and I just thought it was gonna sound like Slayer. I liked it, but it was
And there's something about a garbage truck and a surf
yeah.
guitar.
Yeah.
you know, I respect it, and I did enjoy it when I was younger because I made myself. But those things, as I got a little older and got in, you know, through all the heavier channel, you know, I'm discovering Slayer and magazines, and I would look at stuff in magazines and like the ads and see a goat and what's this and what's that, and you know, meeting Rafe really young was also. I met Rafe when I was 16, I think,
No
and
shit.
yeah, and he really had a huge part of molding me into being like, come this way and look at this stuff. And we discovered a lot of stuff at the same time. You know, he worked at Tower Records on Broadway, and you know, again, I was actually telling this story sort of recently too to someone. I remember when he first came home with the promo for At the Gate, Slaughter of the Soul, and he's like, you got to
Oh
hear
my
this,
God.
and we
Such.
were like, it was a promo. It wasn't out yet. We were like, what is this? You know, and they played New York following, which was great. But he would come home with these promos, and we would learn stuff together, and then he would make me mixtapes, and you know, the handwriting had to be perfect, perfect, and dissection right there. Nick Storch, my brother.
Hey, what up, Nick? How
Uh,
you doing?
uh, we'll get into dissection. We'll get into dissection. Yeah, so I lost my train of thought, but Rafe
No, no.
was
What about
lent a
Rafe?
really big hand into getting me into the slightly darker stuff that I didn't have, let's say, 100% visibility to.
So he was into metal already at that point.
Oh yeah, there's. I'll send you later when we're done with this pictures of him in like '84 swallowing a burning cross, wearing a cloak in his
Right.
old band. Yeah,
That's
Phantom
crazy.
Lord.
Is he older? He's older, right?
I've, I love you, Rafe. Yo, he just texted me as we speak. I have a text from Rafe, Summoner man. Rafe is older. Rafe is 51 this year.
Okay, okay. I
51
think
this year.
somebody worked at Tower Records in on Broadway. I probably saw him there and didn't realize. You know what I mean? I used to go there a lot as a kid, and by the there was a place that had bootleg tapes in a flea market next door.
That thing next door, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was
Yep.
an interesting time. I mean, you and I are not too far apart, so we probably have similar memories of things that were going on at that time. And yeah. So what about the venues and the shows that, you know, like, or, you know, what bands were you going to see in New York locally, and where were you going to find it?
Well, like going to Lemore's was tough because from where I am in Queens, you had to go over the river through the woods to get back into Brooklyn. And like I said, my mom was cool, but my mom was also a little strict. You know what I mean? She was also a little strict. So, you know, sneaking to places like that. Early on, Bond Street Cafe was a venue that when I got into hardcore, I would actually frequent. That was like the CBs to me. You know, in the beginning, there was this venue, Bond Street Cafe, that I started going to shows a lot at.
There was a lot
But
of artsier hardcore would happen there too, right? Is that safe to say?
say that one
Like,
more time. I'm sorry.
like more of the artsier side of hardcore. A lot of bands that were more like in the post-hardcore or noise shit
Bond
like
Street
that.
for me was like Breakdown. Like first time I ever saw 25 to Life,
Oh,
Neglect,
okay, okay.
Crown of Thorns. It was that era of early to mid 90s. But
Got
before that, it was like slightly bigger shows. Like I saw Leeway open for Guar at the Ritz. Uh, and I remember first, and prior to that was a million, mostly bigger venues. Like I didn't find smaller DIY ones until after. Like I found ABC Nerio a little later.
right, right.
You know,
Yeah, it's
like
like easier to find out about like the
yeah,
Irving
you
Plaza.
start here and you meet people and you go down the chain a little bit. And
What were
I
some
went
of
to
your favorite bands?
say,
What were some
uh,
of your favorite
Le-
bands at the time?
Leeway 100% was just because Eddie was like, you know, in a Yankees jersey and going nuts, you know, and he was like a hoodlum. And that was always really cool to me that it was very New York. I didn't realize it then because it was normal to me, but in my neighborhood where I grew up, you didn't have that many people that looked like they were into hip hop or this or that into punk, hardcore, or metal. You know, I was very, very isolated in Queens. It's like South Ozone Park's like Jamaica, you know that area.
Oh
So
yeah,
junior high school was weird because there was weird tension. Like my elementary school, so I was definitely one of the toward the, sixth grade, the only white kid in the school. And little, always in the front of the class photos, like holding the sign, like sitting there because I was tiny. But, when I go to junior high school, now it's like I'm mixed up with the kids that I knew that were zoned to my junior high school, other kids from other neighborhoods, and, entered Guidos into my life.
Oh God, that was the
And,
time, man. That was the
you know,
time.
with few exceptions, the people I knew, I immediately didn't really fit in. Not in I didn't know where to belong, and I was always on guard. Eventually, I found like my community of people, all the thug graffiti writer maniacs. I just sort of slid in there, and lived that way. But yeah, again, I'm losing my train of thought because
No,
I'm
no,
just
no. We were talking
rambling.
about no. It's all relative because I was asking about your favorite bands, and you mentioned Leeway,
Leeway.
and also earlier we were talking about just sort of like coming into your own in the underground. So that explains a lot because everyone finds their tribe, and typically when you're into the kind of subcultures that we're involved with, there's a lot of feeling like an outsider. So it all is relevant.
Yeah, I did, but I didn't. I feel like more of an outsider now, actually, than I did back then. I don't feel very connected. I know there's like a scene in a community, but I don't feel connected to anything or anyone. And as I get older, that connection, it gets thinner and thinner.
Oh yeah,
So,
totally.
but then it was, I was embraced by a lot of different types of people. I don't know, I could hang. I was like the weird metalhead with Jordans. So while there were weird issues and here and there some, not bullying, but definitely people like fucking with me a little bit. I also had backup from other people that were similar to the people that I caught beef with here and there.
Yeah, yeah.
And everything was just very situational when it came to that. So I never really felt like a total outcast. Get made fun of here and there for, you show up with different color hair one day and people want to freak out on you. Now look at everyone.
Oh, so weird. I was walking around with Ron Grimaldi at in Bushwick at Market Hotel, just looking at everybody with pink hair and crazy shit.
And you had to fight for that. Not to be like sound like the old guy that's like back in my day, but you had to defend yourself if you wanted to look like that.
Oh, dude, you're preaching the converted. I got my ass handed to me every fucking
Last
time
week.
I left my house. It sucked. I
Still,
couldn't fucking go down the street.
you can't even go to a movie without getting your ass handed to you.
No, it's fucking everyone called me the
I just gave you the platform to discuss the movie event.
Oh God, Jesus.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah,
I'm being a
yo,
psycho.
you did talk about Queen, but yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the important stuff first, and then we'll get some laughs.
Yeah.
But
You steer the ship.
So you're starting to get into bands like Leeway. You're seeing Crown of Thorns. You're going to hardcore shows. You're finding people. And
I had this kid, this guy that I knew, Sal, in junior high school. I met him in junior high school. I met him before junior high school because he went to elementary school with my cousin Sal, and his sister. He was her age, our age, my cousin Lisa. So I met this guy Sal. She's like, "Oh, you got to meet my friend," whatever. Somehow we connected, and we met in junior high school. And him and I together sort of took the plunge, and Sal sort of went a different direction. And I met this guy Craig. Funny, I got held back a year receiving confirmation for wearing a Sam Hain Initium T-shirt.
no shit.
Yeah, the priest wanted me to, just asked me to turn it inside out, and it was like embarrassing. I was like, nah, I don't really want to do that, and I ended up leaving, not telling my mom. It sort of blew up. I was a kid. I'm like 12, 13, I don't know, whatever I was. But getting held back a year doing that, I met one of my closest friends to this day, Craig. And after Sal sort of took a different path in life, Craig and I really were like the two amigos, just going to shows and doing everything together,
It always helps to have that one guy or girl or whoever, like, in and it's funny you mentioned the fucking thing with the Sam Hain shirt, man. You and I definitely are cut from the same cloth. I remember wearing a Nirvana shirt to Catholic school, and
It's a different
fucking,
cloth. The
well, no,
Samhain
different
was on a
cloth,
better cloth, but
but the
get it.
no pun intended, but the experience that you had was similar. Like I had a nun tell me that suicide was a sin, and then made me give my shirt, took a shirt off my back, and gave it to Salvation Army, and I left.
And what was
Um,
on that shirt? The kid, the naked. You
it
got
was
like a naked kid on your shirt in Catholic school.
I think it was the no, it wasn't anything crazy. It was just like he had just killed himself, so and everyone knew that. So I got a lot of heat for that, and it's like, yo, like what the fuck. So yeah, fuck Catholic school and all that bullshit.
Yeah, I was public school, but I had to go to like the CCD, religious instructions. So you know,
Yeah, yeah,
so I
totally.
still had the wrath. But and well, my family was just sort of like whatever, like it's just going through the motions. They weren't like these psychotic Christians that were forcing me to do anything. They were just it was normal. Probably how it was normal to put you in Catholic school. You know, it was probably better
Oh,
than public school.
Long Island, Queens had a lot. A lot of the people at school were from Queens, so it was the
Hmm.
same kind of situation. And what's interesting before we move on is that like specific to New York, I think a lot of that explains why and how we end up the way we are because you just gravitate when you're like in Catholic school, you are not into that or you're not into like being on a football team. Obviously, like heavy metal, which for me too, like metal came first. Like metal is a great fucking alternative. You know what I mean? To find people. When and how did you start playing your first bands? It was Kill Your Idols the first band?
No, I was in a band prior to that called Down Low with I was in like a weird high school band, not high school, before high school, like junior high school. We did like Vane covers. I don't know if you remember that band. We covered Beat the Bullet. We did some weird covers. That's a deep cut there too. Someone has to know that. Uh, but anyway, yeah, it was just like a garage band, literally. And I got the opportunity to join this band Down Low with Matt Melnick, who was in Disassociate. It was like a,
Oh
a
fuck yeah!
side a side project of Disassociate, and that was cool to me. I met the singer, this guy Joey, who seemed like a nut job, and the drummer was in Immolation. Actually, funny enough,
No
and
shit.
that ties a whole different thing together. At the time, he was in Disassociate actually, and this band Fallen Christ, death metal band from New York,
That's a
which
badass name.
yeah, and I saw Pierre Marc creeping around in these comments. We were just talking about Fallen Christ the month or so ago, so I still have not contacted that guy. I apologize. Um, so anyway, yeah, Alex Hernandez was this wild drummer. It was really cool to just join this hardcore band with this metal drummer. He eventually joined Immolation, and they found this guy Rafe.
Fucking man, can't get rid of Rafe.
And
Just
at
in and out of your
first,
life.
it was so weird because I went from this guy that obviously just hearing the bands he was in, you could figure out his chops. And then I get Rafe, who shows up with like a single kick pedal, and I was like,
Like,
man, I was into this. I was into this fast stuff. And, in hindsight, Rafe is the best drummer I've ever played with, I'll ever play with, because he's one of the best people I know. I love him.
he's one of
And
the
it,
funnest people to watch play drums. Even if you're not a drummer, it's me and my buddy. Actually, I wouldn't show him our imitation of him playing. I wouldn't piss the guy off. But there's something about watching him play that is just not like watching any other drummer play. He's got facial shit going on and the way he hits stuff. It's great.
he's very animated, very, very animated, has his own style. It's crazy because I've seen him, like, I saw him fill in for a couple bands. Uh, I don't think I've seen him play with District 9, but he did District 9 for a minute. And I remember going to rehearsals, and it's like he will not adapt to another drummer's style. He plays those songs his way.
I can't even
And
imagine him playing in that band. That's so bizarre.
no, it
Yeah.
I don't want to say it didn't work, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I respect that, because he's him, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who is what. He's Rafe. He's a single word name, Rafe. So, but yeah, Rafe ended up joining that band,
It's a good segue to Killy Rivals too, because
well, he was also the one that got me, sort of pushed me to join Killy Rivals. Uh, this dude Adam, who managed the band, which yeah, Adam, the Killy Rivals manager, Adam Sachs, ladies and gentlemen.
Adam
It was
Sachs.
like, yeah, he was the manager of Killy Rivals. I hope he's somewhere watching this.
There wasn't a single show that you could go to in New York, whether it was Long
that
Island
Adam wasn't on the
or
stage.
New York City, where he wasn't bouncing. And I don't know if he was getting paid to bounce or if he was just doing it.
No,
wanted to.
No, he wasn't getting paid. He was just he showed up, and he had a CB. He had his own CB stamp with Stamp People. He was a hustler. I gotta give it to him.
Yeah.
But that dude, between him and Rafe, like Rafe sort of pushed me to join the band. He was like, if you guys ever need a bass player, you should get this guy. And it stuck in Adam's head, and he just sort of introduced me to Gary. And I remember I was like, what do I do? Rafe and I loved that first EP, the 12-inch EP. We loved it. Because there was nothing like that at the time. There was absolutely nothing like that.
Straight up real hardcore.
It was a time when things were very heavy. And, my band was like again, Down Low was very fast and different, but it wasn't like Kill Your Idols, Down Low was fast, very heavy. We were tuned to C sharp because all Matt's guitars were in disassociate tuning. And, it was very ahead of its time musically, lyrically behind its time, I think. But, yeah, so Rafe and Adam pushed to get me in that band, and I remember learning all this stuff. And Gary told me, like, we had a phone call, and he was just like, "Look, we're gonna stick with our bass player. It's cool. Glad you learned the stuff. Sorry." And it was like, "Hey, man, cool." It was a little intimidating because I knew they wanted to like tour and stuff, and I was like in school and young at the time, like 17 or something. So eventually, I get a call from Gary, and he's like, "Hey, man, it's Gary." What's up, Gary? He's like, we're playing Crucial Chaos, which was, for those that don't know, it was NYU, New York University's, one of their radio shows that played all like punk and hardcore.
And then it was taken over by Rachel Rosen and some other people.
Yep, Dave from Tapeworm. So, Gary hit me up and was like, "Yo, we're playing Crucial Chaos tomorrow," and our bass player bailed. It's like, is there anything, like, is there any way you remember the songs or you could do this? And I was like, yeah. I remember putting the phone next to, like, my bass amp and, like, playing a couple songs from over the phone. And he was just, like, straining to listen. Know the Pain, actually. I played that over the phone. I played a couple songs, and he just trusted me. Chicky, who was in Sheer Terror, was also in Kill Your Idols on second guitar at the time. He came by my house and picked me up. Just like first time I'm meeting this guy, and his personality was like, there was no personality. It was just like chain smoking in a Camaro, and my amp fit in the back, and it was I think it was him and Adam. But anyway, I get there, and it's like the first time I meet Ron, first time I meet everybody really, and it's like, hey man, hey,
people,
and that was it. And Dan Goldberg, who used to do the website. I don't know if you know Dan.
Who was the original drummer for Kill Your Idols with the glasses?
Jim Conaboy.
Yeah, because I would see him all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Jim, Gary, Andy, and me, just rolling into the radio station. And we set everything up, and I don't even think we got to rehearse anything. I just went for it. And everyone was in the moment playing, and the only person, like, I'm looking around for cues and changes, the only person was Ron. That was just looking at me and giving me the head nod to change.
Ron from Death Cycle, to anybody watching, the late 60s Death Cycle, and also the co-host of the St. Vitus podcast.
Yeah, Ron and Dan were the ones that were giving me, like, the cues on when something's going to change. It was all headphones. You couldn't hear vocals or nothing. It was hectic, and that was just my entry into the band. The CD version of the 12-inch EP has that set on it.
You just answered my question. Awesome. I was wondering if they had it still.
Yeah, it's on the CD version, the 3 1/4-inch CD or whatever. And that was it. It was just I joined the band,
Tell me about
on the spot.
The first So when did they tell you were in the band? Tell me what that was like, and then how you.
That that was it.
Oh, that was
That
it.
was it.
You were it.
Yeah, I played that show, and it was just like, all right, we'll talk, and that was it. Like, I don't even think there was a conversation. It was, next thing you know, we're on tour.
How
It
long?
was
How
the,
long
it
was
was
it?
the,
Oh, you went on tour first.
I went on tour after that, like shortly after that. They had some touring lined up. I just gotten kicked out of St. John's University because, I chose a different path in life that was not scholastic. Uh, I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And, it just all sort of lined up. And I joined the band and we started touring.
And
It
then
was the band's
who was the
second
tour
tour.
with? Who was the tour with?
It was just Kill Your Idols down to Florida and back. It seemed like an eternity. It was probably like a week and a half. And Adam and Ron were both on the tour, and the band was Jim, Andy, and Gary, and that was it. Just went on
At,
tour.
at what point from that, from when you started playing with them, how long was it until you ended up making No Gimmicks Needed?
No Gimmicks Needed was it's going to be 20 in June, actually.
Fucking crazy.
Someone sent me an old postcard, like one of the promo postcards that Blackout made, and I was like, when did this come out? And I Google and I'm like, wow, 20 years ago in like a month.
Actually, you know why I knew that? Because you, Kill Your Idols recorded No Gimmicks Needed at the same exact studio and the
Creep
same
House.
that did On the Might of Princes, and it was all at the same time. Just like you might have been there one weekend, and then we were there the next weekend.
Yeah, you probably saw all the horrible stuff we put on the walls at that place.
And you know what I remember is that every fucking person
Horrible.
I knew had a Kill Your Idols tattoo, or was starting to get one. Everyone was getting really obsessed with Kill Your Idols because we were hanging out with a lot of punk rock people that I think they weren't really into the transition of wherever the scene was going, which was more on this sort of like metal core emo trajectory. So like when Kill Your Idols hit with the first two records, a lot of people I knew were really into the punk rock purist thing, and everyone was getting the tattoos. But
there's
tell me
an
about
impressive amount of those.
tell me about the first record, making it, writing it. I want to hear all about that.
So I joined the band after the first EP is out, and immediately they were writing just the beginning. Like I just sort of fell into writing that, and according to Citizens, someone just got shot 3 blocks away.
Oh, Jesus
So,
Christ. That's
yeah,
happening
man.
a lot around here. I'm in Bed-Stuy. We have gunshots all the time now.
Yep. We'll get into that too, maybe if we got time, because this is showing the true colors of humanity and how weak and pathetic it is on all levels. But
Fuck, man.
we started writing. This is just the beginning, and I even have a song on that. I'm Still Here was mostly, I think, written by me, and I'm sure Gary took it and did the thing with it. But it was cool to just and even the song Just the Beginning was like one or two of my riffs, which was cool to just join this band and be a part of it, and they trusted me, because Gary and Andy were the brains of the operation, and I came in and felt very at home, and we made that like almost immediately, and again, everything was just immediately. There was never any stopping with this band.
That's like when the shit's just flowing. Every band, I feel like a lot of bands have that time period where shit is just coming out of you, and it's that peak. And I feel like No Gimmicks Needed probably was that for you guys as an outsider. From the songs that ended up on that record, the way they became classics to all the fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, songs that I didn't even think, like Epilogue. I never thought that would be a song that people went nuts for. It was even like the choice to cover Crumbsuckers. I thought they were a forgotten band at that point, and it was cool. But we definitely went right into making No Gimmicks Needed, and again, it was just like hourly studios. It wasn't like now where you have your own space. You can even write a record in your house and email with people. This, that, the other. There's so many different unorthodox ways to make a record right now. But we would like rehearse on Long Island, and I never drove. I never drove until after the band was after I was out of the band. I started driving because I had to, joining No More Black. But until then, I was just like, if we're gonna go anywhere, the van has to pass through Queens, right? So pick me up,
Yeah,
man. I pull
you're a New
a
York
Ron.
City guy,
That's a total Ron Grimaldi maneuver right there. Like, just pick me up, drive me everywhere. So, yeah, I remember having to like take the train out to Long Island a lot, rehearse a lot. We would always, mix it up a little bit, right, in some studios in Queens. But I was just always on a train going somewhere with a BC Rich Warlock bass in a gig bag that was too small with the headstock sticking out, and very roughing it sort of. But yeah, that record just came together. We just all had these ideas, and it's a bit of a haze, but I do remember key moments writing certain songs. Like I remember when Gary came in with Right Now, you know what I mean? I remember Autumn. I still have, I love Still Suit, just for the record. I love
Oh
Julian.
fuck! Are you kidding me,
Uh,
dude?
but we had a lot of Still Suit tapes somehow from someone that worked at Wreckage, whatever the label was. And I utilized having a bunch of extra Still Suit tapes to tape the rehearsals over. So,
My God, that's fucking hilarious. Sorry, Julian and Orlando.
no, yo, but I love I love Julian, and Green Spock Ears is great, and even the full length, the TVT one, the name
They're
escapes
one of
me.
my favorites, man. I fractured my leg at Stillsuit last year.
That's
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Well, hold on, just really quick. I don't want to get off too much, but the best part about that is that it was mostly older dudes from Queens fucking going for it, and I just got my ass handed to me.
That's what
Probably some
happens.
guy that was closer to 50, you know?
By Justin Skirty or something.
Probably Justin Skirty, yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking guy
But
with
yeah,
a dick in the fucking in the pit back in the day. Wow.
with those big pants, I still have many demos. Still Suit I loved, but I would tape over it because we had a box of those in the van, and I was like, cool, just could tape practices over this. And people that gave us demos all over the place, I'd be like, yo, thanks. Boom, right in the tape deck, tape a practice over it. If your band was whack, taped a rehearsal over it. Or we do the record release where we threw it out the window of the van.
That's fucking great.
But anyway, I'll move it along because it's like 8:42. I know it's going to end soon, and we're just
We're
at
gonna
the
get
beginning.
off, so I want to get into a lot more than we got to get into None More Black a little bit. We got to get into Black Anvil, and I don't want to just rush through Kill Your Idols either. And we have a great story to tell later on.
Yes, and we got like 15 minutes. So
Yeah, I know. So,
all right, so
that record, the record came out at the best time in my opinion because No Gimmicks needed the name of the record, like just with what was happening in the scene. I'm going to paint a picture. And then I don't mean any disrespect to any bands or anything, but I'm not going to name bands, but there was just a lot of the metalcore thing happening, and like I was playing in like I guess an emo band, but we had more in common with like Sunny Day Real Estate than we did with Poison the Well. So and then you guys came out, and it was like you're bringing back the Negative Approach, not even Sick of It All, like going back to Negative Approach, SSD Control, like really bringing back that kind of stuff. What a perfect record for that time, and it's timeless. It holds up. I just want to say that's my favorite record that you guys put out, and I love that lineup. But what when you think about Kill Your Idols as a whole, I know the band did some reunions. There were different lineups, and I love every era of the band. But if we were to sum up your fondest memories of Kill Your Idols in a nutshell, just like maybe let's go with your top three, so we could kind of get onto Black Anvil. Your top three fondest memories.
Top three fondest memories. Number one was a reunion at the Super Bowl. That there was nothing like that. There will be nothing like that ever. I had my reservations about doing a reunion. Gary was up and down with it, and Cousin Joe would ask all the time, and he just happened to ask at the right time. He put it out to Tom Sheehan. Tom hit me up and mentioned it, and I was like, no reason to say no to this, and I'm sort of being like a stickler and just saying no. And we never could have anticipated that. That was out of control. that was definitely, even though we've been to hell and back, you know, breakdowns physically, mentally, be it a van or a human being. We've been through everything, and we toured like 8 months out of the year and loved each other and hated each other. That show was just years of just our lives sort of came to a head there, and
Great show. That was a
that was
great.
great. Also, the parking lot show, which was the last show before that,
I was at that
was
too. I was at both those shows. That was sick.
that was something that just showed that, you know, our fans were our friends, you know, and there's you were there, you know. I really can't
Oh, the
articulate how
I'll
that
paint a
felt.
picture of this. It's on YouTube, but the show was in the back of Joe's Garage in Lindenhurst, which was, you know, that's a great place and a mecca for Long Island hardcore. And it's all friends playing, hanging out in the parking lot. The cops showed up. It was just such a beautiful ending.
Yeah,
At the time when the band was ending its first run, it's a beautiful way to end it.
yeah, and I'm gonna say, just because it sticks out, I'm sure if I had time, I could think of something. I remember we played Full Force Festival, and Gary and I had to go collect the merch, and we're walking from like the merch tent, both carrying these giant boxes right when Slayer starts, and they open with Hell Awaits, and we're in this sea of people that are going nuts, and just the drums, Hell Awaits starting, and him and I are just holding these boxes trying to maneuver, and it's just something that I'll always remember. Like, we were looking at each other like, man, this sucks, but at the same time, this is great.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just Slayer pummeling Hell Awaits in like the early '90s or 2000s. That was just, that's always something I think about. It's funny. It was a good moment
Oh
with
man.
Gary.
I hate how quickly things go on this when you're having a good time. I'm gonna kind of push along. Let's just kind of you the band the band broke up, had some reunions, some amazing ones. I highly suggest that if you weren't at Black and Blue Bowl for the reunion show or the last show at the parking lot, that you look that up on YouTube because it was fucking beautiful. You played in None
Yeah,
More
and
Black.
I urge supporting the band, because the Kill Your Idols is still a band, and we just lost Vinny, who was playing drums. I'm sure most people watching this know, and that's still something I haven't grasped. I'm
Was to interview him. I had a
uh,
conversation with him about it. It's
yeah.
terrible.
I'll save that for like an off the record with you, because I have views, and you know, I understand a lot of things in my head differently than other people might, but that was horrible. And our friend Anthony is stepped in, and you know, I just I love all those guys, and I'm happy that they're gonna continue and keep something alive respectfully, you know.
Absolutely.
So,
They
but
did a
I'll
great show. They did a great show with Gorilla Biscuits right before the pandemic. I'm so happy that was one of the last things I got to see. Now, I don't want to rush you too
no,
much.
rush. I'll be quick too.
No, no, please, because we really got to talk about Black Anvil. You know, None More Black was a band that you were in at some point with
Yeah, when Kill Your Idol stopped
them.
tour, I'll give you the number black in a heartbeat. Number Kill Your Idol stopped touring, and Jason had this other band, and I was saying to these guys, I'm like, you know, I'm gonna end up joining something because I want to tour. And when I heard the demos, the first Number Black demos, I was floored. I'm like, wow, Jason's playing guitar and singing. He to me is a perfect musician. He's never written a song that's bad. He could he's a perfect musician for me. Uh, and I heard the demo, and I jokingly hit him up and was like, if you ever need a bass player, and he's like, okay, same thing, just joined, you know. And within a couple of months, we were on Fat Records, and a record was made, and we were on tour, and
Hey, man,
almost the same story as it all goes, you know. We
that's what
toured
happens. Yeah.
relentlessly and burned ourselves out, but very, very special band to me. We've had a bit of a door that revolved, and we broke up and got back together, and you know, that to me was huge. Jason wrote everything. I didn't write a lick of music for that band, but I learned being a part of it how important it was to just hold it down and do my job in that band. And
Yeah.
yeah, it made me a better musician. It opened me up to a lot of different things, and when that ended, Black Anvil began. So,
Tell me about how Black Anvil came to be, which is your band on Relapse Records. You're the lead singer
season,
and bass player.
we actually just signed with Season of Mist.
Season of Mist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
You
that's
mentioned
all right.
that. Yeah. Tell me how the band started, because it's a black metal band. You went a different route genre-wise. You're the lead singer now, and of course playing bass. Tell us about how it all came to be and catch us up to speed.
Well, I joined after like No More Black sort of slowed down, and Gary had a band called Death Cycle that you mentioned, and I hit him up, and I'm like, if you ever need a bass player, boom, I end up joining Death Cycle. Things didn't work out with the guy they had, and who's another friend, and it was just one of those like I'll step in. Sure, I want to play with Gary again. It's been some years, and after rehearsals, I get behind the drums, and I'm like, check this out. And Gary and I threw something together, and it was great. But I it was me on drums, which is not Rafe on drums.
No
And
idea.
and I hit Rafe up. I'm like, yo, I'm coming by tomorrow. You got to hear this song. Studio's open on Thursday. We should do this. And the next day I saw Rafe. I let him hear the song. We drove out to Long Island, and first Black Anvil song was done, which is on the first EP, 10 Talons Deep. And that was it. It just started right then and there. And we initially wanted to keep it, like a demo band, throw out some demos and just have fun. And then a friend was interested in putting a record out in Holland, and it was like, all right, let's make a record. And the second that came out, Relapse came up and was like, hey, man. And that was it. We sort of had no choice but to do it. We didn't want to, but we did.
At one point you made a record with Jay Robbins, which I loved.
The third record, yeah.
I thought that was so cool, because he obviously, he was in Jawbox, but he was in Government Issue. But to make a black metal record with Jay Robbins, that's way more interesting to me than making a black metal record with someone that just makes that kind of shit all the time.
He made he made a No More Black record, the second record. This is Satire. We were in the studio with him for a month, and it was an experience like no other. He's a very warm, another one of these guys. I was really intimidated because this guy is a genius musician, and I'm like, I'm going to show up playing these whack bass lines, and I remember getting into a little thing with him, monitoring the time here. I remember getting into a little bit of an issue with him where I was just like low end, low end, low end, and he was like, "No, you can't do that." And I'm like, "It's got to sound like hip hop in a car. Like there's a bass, like this needs to sound like a bass." And the conversation wasn't that, and I wasn't like screaming at him, but I was really insistent on it, and he let me slide. Cool. So I go see one of his bands, Report Suspicious Activity? I forget. It was with Vic Bondi from Articles of Faith. I believe that was the name of the band. I go to see them in New York. They played Knitting Factory, and I commented on his. He played bass in that band, and I was just like, "Your bass sounded," and he cut me off and was just like, "We rehearsed." He's like, and I hadn't touched the bass amp since the No More Black session, and I'm like, "Why does this thing sound so mean?" He's like, "And it was your settings," and I was like, "Motherfucker." Yes, see? And it was like the student learned to teach in such a way. It was just a coincidence, but it was really cool because he's just such a humble, amazing guy. There's a really good studio documentary, too, that Jason from No More Black filmed. He hung out with us in the studio for like a week or two and made a little mini documentary on Hail Death with Jay Robbins. But because of that No More Black experience, I always thought, man, he did this Clutch record. He did a Sword record. I don't like the Sword, but I like the production. This Hey Mercedes record that Jason loved, he put me onto that, and I liked the record and I love the production. And I was like, man, Jay Robbins is so natural. He's got to do this, and we're a different band, like sonically, we just are who we are. And I thought he would really capture us, and he did.
He really did. And, Black Anvil put out a bunch of records with Relapse. Now you're on Season and Mist. Shout out to Travis Bacon, really good friend of ours who played with the band for a long time. So you guys did a lot of tours. You did a tour with Mayhem. What was that? Tell me about the experience that it's been so far playing with so many cool bands and reinventing yourself?
It's good because all these dudes respect us, and I guess it's one of these things where I always hear horror stories about bands, and I'm like, fuck them. We're from here, they're from there. I go into things negatively all the time, you know, and going out with Watain, we had some connections. We were in cahoots, but I'm always like, if these motherfuckers are gonna be assholes, I go into it like that, and it's like one of these real recognizes real scenarios. Like going out with Mayhem, they were cool, mad respectful. We like our privacy. I don't need to be hanging out with you every 10 minutes. I don't care who you are. And yeah, it was great touring with them. I have obviously a huge amount of respect for them throughout the years for just keeping this together. And now it's sort of come back to a really good point with Mayhem. And yeah, it was good. We did like 8 weeks of touring with them.
I have a lot of respect for you doing the different bands you've done because you reinvented yourself. It's all deep rooted in the same thing, but you did a punk band, you did a black metal band, you did a straight up hardcore band, and you play in a lot of other bands filling in. I just think
you got to evolve and you got to grow as an artist. I think it's really important. And certain things, if you just stay there, they're very stagnant. And I don't mean it as a diss to the hardcore scene or this or that, but there's a lot of stagnance in just sticking with what you're used to and what's safe. And I don't know, if something is that, I want to go this way always, and I always want to take a chance. And luckily all the people I've ever been in bands with always want to do that too, and I think it's real important to not necessarily always reinvent yourself, but always move forward and progress as a musician. And when it comes to everything about being in a band, what your band is about, even, we used to sing about, Kill Your Idols had some songs that, dealing with depression, also enjoying the show, I don't enjoy the show now. I don't enjoy people. So, how do we enjoy our show, and we push ourselves.
Oh, you didn't. Okay, I have to ask you this because we have 3 minutes left. We obviously don't want to be stuck in pandemic mode, but let's just say we're stuck a little bit longer than we prefer. You have 5 records that you get to keep. Why? What are they and why?
I was going to say, because no one's coming to my house.
Yeah, no one's coming.
2 shotguns in that closet right there.
5 records you get to keep. And, well, we don't have to say why because we have to move on. 5 records.
I'll just name 5, and then when I'm stuck with 5, I'll reconsider my my choices. But I'm going to go with Kiss Alive 2. Any Earthhouse record. Let's just, because you're putting pressure on me here. Any Earthhouse record. I'm going to keep Iron Maiden Final Frontier because Steve STB gave me that on vinyl, and I love that record as much as I love classic Maiden records. So I'm just going to say that, and I listened to that today, and I love Steve.
Hey, Paul, you know what? We're gonna do a round 2. I don't give a shit. So
all right.
The timer is going down. I'm watching the timer go down. So if we get cut off,
just 5 Kiss records. 5 Kiss records. That's it.
Let's go offline. I'll go back on. You rejoin me. We'll get a couple more questions out of the way because it just sucks. We haven't covered enough stuff.
That works for me.
We don't usually do round 2, but I think that we should do round. People want it, so we'll give it to them. I'm
honored. We'll keep it to like 5-10 minutes or something.
All right, fuck it. All right, I'm gonna take you off. Just give me a second, right?
Cool.
All right. Yo, what's amazing is that we obviously this is living proof that it's a show on a local venue because we don't usually get pushed to do round 2, but we have a lot of local people watching that are having a good time, so we can't let them down.
I appreciate it. I appreciate being one of the exceptions to the rounds.
You got a lot of support here, Paul. You got a lot of people that want to hear your story. So you said 5 Kiss records. You're a big Kiss fan, huh?
It's my all-time favorite band. I love Kiss.
All right.
I've ripped off Kiss. I rip off Kiss.
Hey, you know what?
Always.
I fucking one of the first cassette tapes I got was Destroyers, so that shit obviously changed my life. I actually to stick to the Saint Vitus theme, I have a picture of myself in Peter Criss makeup hanging out with John Joseph at St. Vitus. It's a great photo.
I was gonna say there's one place I don't want to be.
um, it's pretty priceless. So okay, before we move on from the lists, because those are usually my final questions. Top 5 New York hardcore records.
New York hardcore records. It's going to be the obvious, you know. It's going to be the obvious. For me, Agnostic Front, Liberty and Justice is my album that I love. And this is no particular order, of course.
Agnostic Front, Victim in Pain.
Liberty and Justice 4
Liberty
is my.
Wow.
That's my record. It's heavy. It's different. You know.
Right.
That's my favorite AF record. I'll say Madball Set It Off is perfect. I remember I saw Madball prior to that. I've heard Madball prior to that. When I got Set It Off, it was like right when I got a CD player too. You know, we were late to the CD player game. First CDs I ever got, Token Entry, Jaybird, and Born to Desperate Measures were the first 2 CDs I ever got. And Fugazi, those 3 in one purchase. But anyway, Set It Off, like Freddie's voice was threatening.
Oh my God.
First time hearing Set It Off when it came out, it was like that, Murphy's Law, Dedicated, and that first H2O record all came out around the same time. At least I got them all around the same time, and Set It Off was just, it set it off. So I got those 2. I'm going to say Carnivore Retaliation, because even though Carnivore might have been lumped in with more metal, Pete Steele was and is a huge influence and such an important part of my musical life. So many levels for my entire life. And that record, Retaliation, there's nothing like that. That's number 1.
Go as far as to say that your evolution or progression has a lot in common with Pete Steele, because you're a front man and he started out as like a skinhead hardcore dude.
He could play bass though. That's the difference.
Yeah, well, there you go.
he could play the bass. I
bullshit
my way through.
But I just wanted to say that really quick because he's an old school head that progressed and went through changes, and I think that's something to be said, you know.
Yeah, always pushed it. Was never afraid to sing and do things that any other band would take a chance like that. Even Merciful Fate, you know, like imagine in the early '80s if the lyrics weren't satanic, like Devil Eyes. This doesn't sound cool or tough, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I love that. There was no fear ever to take a risk with in Pete Steele's mind. So yeah, Carnivore Retaliation, Leeway. I'm gonna say Desperate Measures over Born to Expire for me personally, because that was like my time coming around, and that hit me differently. It's just such a special record. Again, then I start arguing with myself. So let's just end it there. And what would be a 5th? Age of Quarrel, right? How do you leave that out?
Age of Quarrel or Best Wishes, one or the other.
I'm going to say Age of Quarrel.
Yes, and I think I asked you this already. I'm giving away some things here. We're both announcing some things. You just announced that Black Anvil signed to Season and Mist. I sent you a song that I wrote and recorded by myself that has no real working title that I want you to sing on and maybe play bass if you're down. And
I'll do it when I hang up.
Yeah. It sounds like Age of Quarrel meets Best Wishes, and you even told me, you're like, wow, you really went for it with the Cro-Mags thing. So,
it sounds like Best Wishes meets Best Wishes.
Yeah, I think when I texted you, it was called Best Quarrel.
Best Quarrel, yeah. Yeah. Also, I'm doing some shameless promotion here, but this I got another thing that just put a record out. It's called Duivel, Duivel. It's a black metal band with Jim from Urfaust. He wrote a bunch of songs and sent it to me, and was just like, play bass. And I played bass. And another accomplice that makes all the Urfaust records, recorded drums, and yep, shameless. But you know what? It's part of my story. So I'm over here. You're over there.
Look, Tom Sheehan. Shout out to Tom Sheehan.
There he is. I'm almost done with your shit, Tom. Almost done with your shit, Tom. I'm trying not to look at who's babbling down there, you know? Because I know Corey's just screaming about shit, you know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, you can find it all on social media here and there. We push it, but it's rotten Dutch black metal, and I'm honored to play alongside some big dogs on that. It's really cool, and it's just very raw, fucked up black metal, the way it should be.
Hey man, this is all about you, by the way, and all about shame. There's no shame here. This is your show. Which
No, I always rock my own shit. The brand, look at that, everywhere. I don't give a fuck.
Well, we could talk about the one time I saw you and recognized you, which I'll tell the story in a second. But anybody tuning in that missed the first part, I'm going to be shameless and promote my YouTube channel, because this show, along with all the other episodes, will be on there. So if you go on YouTube and look up Chris Enriquez, this entire episode will be on there within the next hour, within the next 24 hours. And to go back to Madball, Hoya from Madball is going to be a guest on our show next week.
Good.
We have a very diverse show. We have everyone from Chelsea Wolf to Madball to I Hate God. We got a lot of different types of guests. So tune in. What can we expect from Black Anvil post pandemic?
We have a record written, like 95 to 98% written. So it's in the can and it's ready to go. And obviously, because of all this, we've had to not rehearse with not everyone living in the same city at the moment, and even living in the same city. You know, it's just a weird time. So everything just sort of got put on hold. But a record is almost completely written, with maybe a little kink, you know, that'll get ironed out before it needs to be. But as soon as everything opens up, we'll hopefully be able to make it. Like, it's literally everyone is on board, everything's ready to go. Here and wait, which is frustrating, but I
think we got some buffering issues with the internet. We got most of that, but I think
all
it's
right.
frozen on the screen.
Yeah, that happens to me.
Is everybody else seeing normal? Is it just me?
Maybe this is your whack phone.
Looks like Paul. I know. Well, you're frozen on my phone right now. You're not moving on my phone. Let's see. Yeah, it's still frozen. We can hear you though. We heard that there's a. Yeah. Well, I'll keep talking a little bit about that. Oh, there it is. So yeah, like Black Anvil has. So you heard it here first. Black Anvil has a record that hopefully when this is over, the pandemic, that you guys will release and go on tour and get to play for everybody. And the band keeps getting better. I mentioned the J. Robbins record, and that stood out to me because I felt like the band was just getting better.
Yeah, we're gonna do the same the same suspects in this one. We're gonna track with Colin from Krallis in Queens and ship it off to Necromorbus in Sweden to mix and master. And Valnor will handle the art as always. Stick with our people that we trust.
Paul, tell me what bands I missed that you filled in on bass for. You did Cro-Mags, H2O, Hazen Street. What am I missing?
I played guitar for Hazen Street for a tour, and it was guitar for H2O and Hazen Street in Japan. It's just one tour. I filled in for Madball a lot early on when it was like a time where, like, who fills in for Hoya?
Right.
Nobody fills in for Hoya, but I got to fill in for Hoya. Busky also has filled in for Hoya.
Saw him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not one of those things that's easy. It's very intricate and detailed, and it makes you a man, because there's no room for error there. So, I filled in for all those guys. I filled in for John and Mackey's. thing a bunch. I filled in for Rise Against in Australia on a gigantic tour. That was literally get a phone call, get on a plane. Couldn't even bring a bass. Had to sneak into New Zealand,
Yeah.
That was wild because I'm playing Big Day Out and I don't know any of the songs.
And that's like you're playing in a mainstream band. That's kind of a mainstream band.
Yeah, this was on as they were getting bigger. We've known those guys for years. There's been a couple of almosts. Like I almost filled in for Agnostic Front. I took a little 4 or 5 day cruise with them, but Gallo was able to make it. And
Long Island represent. What's up, Gallo?
almost filled in for Against Me, which was an interesting one. Because Andrew's an old friend. That would have been strange, but not strange. So, yeah, I played one chorus for Alarm Show. Filled in for quite a bunch of people.
You played with everybody. That's all I was asking because I'm like, I know I'm missing shit. Like, those are the ones on Surface that I remembered. Well, let me ask you this because you mentioned the Japanese tour with Hazen Street, which I know was big, and Rise Against. What are some like fucking holy shit moments that you could share? Like, let's go top 3 like holy shit moments.
I don't really have those. I don't really get that. I don't get holy shit. But I'll tell you one cool thing on that Rise Against tour. It's that Big Day Out festival. It's massive. Seeing the Beastie Boys hop out of a shuttle bus and arrive to the grounds was one of those moments where I was like, it's pretty cool. It's just as far as I am from my phone right now, and these dudes were right there. It was really interesting. Yeah, that was just a shocking, surreal moment. You see all these other momos walking around backstage, and it's like, yeah, right. I could get deeper into that, but there's definitely some people that are, you don't want to go near people. You don't want to go near people. I was with Nick Storch. This is a moment that he doesn't want to relive, but we went to that Orion festival in Jersey, and tried dragging me away from Metallica is not going to happen. I'm there until I'm watching them break the drum set down. I'm not going anywhere.
Anybody that's gonna try to front like watching Metallica even today sucks. You're on crack.
Metallica is great from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And whatever comments could be whatever. I'm not even going to read. I don't even care. But Metallica's great. Think of a band that's done what they've done, and you can't.
Unbelievable. I will pay to watch them any day of the week. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I rip off Load and Reload a lot. I'm highly influenced by those records as I get older and dive into it differently with a different mindset.
Yeah.
Let's not say rip off, but let's say rip off. You know what I mean?
Paul, before we walk off like holy shit moments and running into weirdos backstage, because we were also talking about like people with rock star attitudes. I just want to share one.
Yeah, share.
One, but this is bizarre, but On the Might of Princes opened up for Misfits, like not at a festival, like an actual show somewhere in like Poughkeepsie, and Marky Ramone was backstage playing because he was playing drums. And he fucking, I went up to the guy. They always say you don't meet your idols sometimes, right? I said something like, hey, it was really awesome playing with you. And the dude didn't even fucking look at me. He had sunglasses on backstage. It was super dark. He took a bar napkin off the bar. He had a Sharpie ready to go in his pocket. And he fucking autographed it, even though I didn't ask for one, and kind of like threw the napkin at me. And then just bounced.
How do you not? and how do you not stomp his face? He's a Ramone, right? He's a Ramone. But you're gonna throw a napkin at me, motherfucker? You're playing in like the most out of gas version of the Misfits right now, and you're gonna throw a napkin at me? I'll stomp him. I'll take his drums home and I'll put them on eBay.
It was unbelievable. I didn't know if I should call him a dick or if I should have. I didn't know how to feel. You
reacted naturally because I probably would have been as dumbfounded as you, but being over here and just we're talking shit right now. That's like grounds for who the fuck do you think you are,
Oh my God, yeah. So those are some cool moments. You've had some really cool moments, and that's kind of what makes you interesting to talk to and interview you out of like a lot of the dudes in the bands that you've been in, because you were Squish said something that that you're the journeyman, which a lot of people call Craig Ahead the journeyman, which he is. You're also the journeyman. And also doing different genres, which we should mention. So cool shit, man. I'm gonna just launch into the story, Paul. This is a funny story for everybody.
Also, Craig is a huge influence. Like the sound, the bass sound on "Scratch the Surface" changed everything for me. So
Yeah,
I'll put that out there.
So Paul, I saw you one day. You have a lot of Black Anvil stuff behind you. He sport, black metal bands and metal bands in general will wear their own shirts and shit. You can't do that when you're playing other kinds of stuff.
This logo is important to me, and I'll rock that on everything 80 times down the sleeve. That,
Yeah. So this is a good one. This is a good one for you. I was at the movies one day by myself. I don't usually go to the movies by myself, but I went and saw Bohemian Rhapsody, right? And I'm not gonna fucking front. I started bawling in the middle of that movie. I lost my shit, even though I knew that Freddie Mercury was gonna die. And in the middle of the movie, well, at the beginning of the movie, I saw a dude with a Black Anvil patch, but I actually didn't know it was you. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That guy's really into Black Anvil. And movie's over. I realize it's you. We're kind of going towards the exit. I have been bawling for like fucking 10 or 15 minutes or something. And I'm like, shit, I don't want to see this guy right now. Any other day, any other time, I'd be cool with it. And
and the funny thing is, and it's not personal toward anyone, but I avoid everyone. If I see people, I'll dip. I don't want to be punished by anyone, and that's not just, and of course I see you, I'll run up to you. You know what I mean? But generally speaking, I'm out. I don't need to deal with nobody. I don't like dealing with people anymore.
Oh no, it's all love, but it was just so funny. Like I'm like, normally I'd be excited. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, my eyes are puffy, and then it just got to that point where he couldn't do anything about it. And I remember it distinctly. Obviously, it was not weird for you. I'm just like, hey man, how you doing? What'd you think of the movie? I'm trying to play it all fucking cool. I'm like, yeah, it was all right, whatever.
You try to be tough, like even your voice was tough.
Yeah.
It's like when you get that phone call and you're having fun and you're like, yo, hello.
Oh,
so yeah, I actually didn't. I don't think I caught that you were upset and having a crisis like that. I was just more shocked that this fucking guy looked just like Brian May, and I'm like, man. There was some aspects of it that I was just like, all right, I don't cry a river for many things. I do get upset, trust me, but I'm not one to get upset for that reason. But yeah, you covered it up well somehow.
Yes, I did. They did nail it. But I just had to share that because this is going to go on YouTube, and I'm one for entertainment, and I'll always put myself
trust me. I wish I could turn around and be like, and so you crying and been like, bro, like, but I didn't, and it's very big of you to come clean and tell the world that you were crying to the end for like the last 15 minutes of Bohemian Rhapsody. I didn't even realize the last 15 minutes was that brutal.
It's confessional time, I guess.
Yep.
Dude, I am stoked that we got to do this, and
yeah, me too, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any kind of like final shout outs, announcements, or anything you want to tell people? Obviously, drop the socials, make sure everyone knows where to follow you and keep up to date.
Black Anvil, all one word. That's it. We'll rear our head when we need to. Right now, it's just calm before the storm sort of thing. And anyone that's been shouted out so far, that's it. Other than that, that's the only shout out we need right now, I guess, right?
Hey, man, thank you for the decades. I hate saying that. I can't, sometimes when I think about the fact that it's 2020, I get bugged out. But thanks for the decades of classic music. I think that your catalog will live up, and a lot of it does, to the way that classic records for us growing up, when you look at, the 80s hardcore and the 90s shit, man, you guys... in Kill Your Idols really made your mark, and I still put that shit on. It's still relevant today.
Thank you.
And Black Anvil is forging ahead, man. So,
life is short. Life is very short, and we're not here much longer. So enjoy it and prepare
Absolutely.
for what lies after that.
Yeah, and if I'm lucky, you and I will have a track that we'll put out together and work on. So we'll figure that out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Stay safe out there, my friend, and
You
we'll
too.
talk very soon. Send my best to Rafe and the guys.
I will.
All right. Peace out.
All right.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks for spending your night with us. So I didn't get to any of your questions. Hopefully we did a good job. There was just too many things to talk about. And now you know a lot about me watching Bohemian Rhapsody in the movie theater. So there you go. Have a good night. Take it easy. And have a good night.